Alright, so if you're a Warhammer 40k fan, you are very pleased with yourself, because as of last week we got a brand new reveal trailer for Dawn of War 4. Arguably the most anticipated thing from any game for any 40k fan, when you consider Dawn of War 3 was supposed to be that, but then, that happened. As for many of the people in the hobby, Dawn of War was the introduction to this beautiful world. But not for me. My childhood RTSs was StarCraft 2.
I am so sexy. I sometimes romance myself.
And Age of Empires 2 respectively. Shout out to AoE 3 and Command & Conquer 3 as well. God, love those games. So if, like me, you didn't really grow up with Dawn of War, and you haven't really played it much to be fair, you may be very curious about who exactly are those chaps in the trailers, what are they doing, and what does all this mean? But don't worry, I got you covered. As today we're going to be covering the timeline of Dawn of War, exploring every single game, including the third one, to make sure by the time that beautiful Dawn of War 4 drops, you know exactly who the hell Cyrene and Gabriel Angels are. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's start with today's video. The original Dawn of War begins on the planet Tartarus, an imperial civilized world, aka a world that isn't actually that bad. There was, however, until orcs. A massive orc war is in the city and everything is going pretty bad. We then cut to Mr. Colonel Brom, leading his 37th Taurus PDF regiment. And it's not going good, it's not going good at all. We had a classic scene of a commissar executing some people for nonsense right before the Blood Ravens 3rd Company shows up, led by everyone's favorite backflipping super chad, Gabriel Angelos. The timely intervention of the Angels of Death saves Brom and his company, with the remaining men then proceeding to exterminate all the orcs in vicinity, securing the area, for now at least. After all this happens, Mr. Gabriel is joined by a librarian, known as Isander Aikos. As the Space Marines and the guards begin mulling about and coalescing with one another, Brom then asks Isander a rather odd question. Apparently, he's heard about the exterminatus of the planet Cyrene, aka Gabriel's home world. How exactly he knew about this, what exactly happened, that's another thing entirely. But Isando makes it clear that, touchy subject, don't talk about it, please, for the love of God. Homie's gonna backflip on top of you. However, despite the Blood Raven's best efforts as well as the PDF, the planet is not looking too hot, so they need to get the hell out of Dodge. So to do so, they then prepare a mission of extermination, specifically around the port. The idea being they gotta get rid of all the orcs, secure the port, and then everyone can get off world. More specifically, the planet's population. And hopefully the guard and the ravens, of course. Isandor is doing librarian things, and he ends up sensing that the captain's mind is troubled. And then he realizes why as we find more about his home world. Apparently, Cyrene did something. What exactly happened yet? Don't know, but we'll find out later. Isandor expresses that Gabriel could do nothing, that it wasn't his fault. Gabriel, however, Space Marine as always, tells him, touchy subject, don't talk about it, bro. But he does go on saying that his home world was his responsibility. So whatever happened, he feels like he had a hand in it. The Imperial forces then assault the port, and with Space Marines leading the charge, being reinforced by some guards, they're able to get rid of the orcs quick sweet. But just like when everything looks like it's coming up Millhouse, this is 40k baby, so something goes wrong. As some scout marines soon reveal to Gabriel that chaos has now showed up. And lo and behold, right on cue, they are joined by an Inquisitor, known as Mordecai Toth. Said Inquisitor then orders the Blood Angels to get the hell out of Dodge, as he reveals that a warp storm is approaching the planet, and will consume it in roughly about 3 days. Thus, Toth orders the complete evacuation of the planet's remaining population. But Space Marines being Space Marines do not really want to cut and run, so they decide to investigate further, and lo and behold, they find Eldar. Specifically those of the crop world Bieltan. They're also on Tartarus doing God Almighty knows what. Upon further poking, the Blood Ravens then find an altar which is dedicated to Chaos Undivided, meaning all 4 Chaos Gods. The Gabriel Angels, however, this is something that can't really be overlooked. This is confirmation for a fact that there are Chaos here, they're doing shenanigans, and the Imperium has a duty to not just cut and run. They have to stand here, they have to destroy Chaos, and they have to make sure that whatever they want to do is prevented from happening. All this, however, is occurring while their librarian, Mr. Isidore, is already falling underneath the influence of one Sindiri Mir, a Chaos Sorcerer of an Alpha Legion warband, said warband already being on said planet. The Blood Ravens then begin destroying the rest of the Eldar, as one does, with Gabriel meeting their chief Farseer, that being Maka, pleading with Gabriel to heed her words. As she begins revealing to her something important, however, Sindri, the Alpha Legion Sorcerer, then steals the artifact, which March reveals to be quote-unquote the key to the undoing of this world. cryptic as always. Gabriel looks at her and says, "Chick, what the hell are you smoking?" But Marka then is indeed very surprised by this, as she then hints that Mr. Toff, the Inquisitor chap, knows more than he's letting on. From there, she would then reveal where the Chaos Forces were, as she had learnt the location through some means. Gabriel and Isidore then have a pitched battle with the Alpha Legion forces. After successfully driving off the traitors, they then meet with Inquisitor Toth in the ruins of an Imperial temple. Gabriel and Isidore basically tell him, "Yo, you haven't been straight with us, what's up? Tell us the truth." That is when Toth reveals that the world is actually cursed, as it was home to a unique chaos artifact, known as the Maledictum, a stone which is said to contain the essence of a greater demon of Khorne, aka a bloodthirster, aka the same one that Sanguinius had to fight. So this is a pretty big deal. It's also revealed that the Chaos Forces now have everything they need to unearth said artifact and release said demon. Toth then goes on to explain that the Eldar were fighting to protect the stone, as it was them who had imprisoned the demon way back when. He then goes on to blame the Eldar, saying that if they had just told them about it, they'd been able to stop it, but then again, you know how it is with the Imperium and the Eldar. Also, very hintingly, Toth also says that the power of the Maledictum is enough to quote-unquote turn the faithful and drive man mad. It's also revealed that at this point much of the population of Tartarus and the Imperial Guard there have also been corrupted, and even hints of the Blood Ravens being somewhat infected. Gabriel and Toth then resolve to form an alliance and make plans to find and destroy the Maledictum and anyone trying to get it. However, Isidore is now completely overcome by the temptation of Sindri and Chaos, and thus he secretly resolves to steal the Maledictum for himself. The Blood Ravens then engage with the Chaos Forces of the Alpha Legion, led by their Chaos Lord known as Bale, who in classic Chaos fashion has betrayed Sindri. During this time, however, Isidore seizes the chance and steals the Maledictum. Gabriel, absolutely incensed by this, then decides to pursue him and bring him to justice, cause that's just wrong cuz. The Blood Raven forces are successful in destroying Isidore's traitor Imperial Guard troops, whilst Gabriel manages to defeat Isidore in single combat. Isidore kinda quickly comes to his senses and pleads for forgiveness to Gabriel, but Gabriel Angelos in classic Imperial fashion tells him that if redemption is what you seek, then it is what I shall give you, before just straight up doming him in the head with a bolt pistol. It doesn't matter who you are, chaos is chaos, and chaos is the enemy of the Imperium. Toth then pops back up and reveals that he had known that Chaos was corrupting one of the Space Marine boys. He thought it was Gabriel though, and then waxes poetically how they have paid for his error. Even though in reality if he had just, been straight and talked about it, that's one thing, but that's neither here nor there. But whatever did happen to that old Maledictum thing? Well, it turns out that Mr. Sindri had used it to turn himself into a demon prince. Funny how often that happens, eh? It's at that point that Toth finally ends up trusting Gabriel, and gives him an "I'm sorry, I thought you were an evil traitor" present, known as the Demon Hammer God Splitter. The Blood Ravens then resolve to assault the Chaos Forces, and they form an unlikely alliance with the Eldar forces of Farsi and Maka, who are still around. Damn, there's a lot of elves for a race that was dying. Thus, the combined force then assaults the chaotic elements, and eventually they end up killing the Demon Prince Sindri. However, as the Eldar and Blood Ravens stand victoriously, there is a debate amongst their ranks. Farsi Amaka and the Eldar are like, hey, don't crack that open, that's going to be bad. Inquisitor Toth, as well as Gabriel himself, believes that they really should. Thus, Gabriel, trusting his own judgment and that of humans over filthy knife ears, destroys the Maledictum with the God Splitter. The Eldar are absolutely maddened by this. Not only maddened, but also scared to high hell, and they decide to dip. Not before, however. Marka tells Gabriel that they have doomed them all. The Blood Ravens and most of the Imperials also dip, but most notably, Gabriel stays back. And that is when he encounters the great demon of Khorne, an unnamed bloodthirster. It turns out that when Gabriel destroyed the stone, he destroyed the prison, not the demon. Even though that kind of makes sense when you think about it, because the prison is the stone, the demon wasn't part of the stone. Like, Gabriel I can forgive for not really knowing about it, he's not really super into demons, but surely the Inquisitor would have known this was bullshit. But then again, Toth isn't exactly a good Inquisitor, so But regardless of that, surprisingly for everyone involved, Khorne included most probably, the demon decides to let Gabriel and his men go, thanking the Blood Ravens for releasing him. But don't get it twisted. He then tells Gabriel that he will soon come and claim both him and his men that were remaining there, most notably those that are after the Third Company. Gabriel for his part vows to destroy the demon, and thus the final scene of the Dawn of War campaign is Gabriel Angelos following his departing Blood Ravens, with a new foe being unleashed in the background. Alright, next up we have the first expansion for Dawn of War 1, that being Winter Assault. The campaign of Winter Assault takes place on the world of Crom 5, and centers around one of four factions: the Eldar, the Imperial Guard, the World Eaters of Chaos, and the Orcs. The campaign can be neatly divided into two separate versions, one being the Forces of Order, an unlikely alliance between the Eldar and the Imperial Guard, and the Forces of Disorder, an equally unlikely alliance but far more brutal of the Orcs and of course the World Eaters. Both campaigns are the same until a certain point, at which point the player has to choose one faction, though both of them are relatively similar. But beginning with the Forces of Order, the 412th Regiment of the Acadian Shark Troops, under the command of General Stern, is dispatched to the world of Lorne 5, an ice world which is currently being ruled by Chaos Space Marines, but is currently being beset by Orcs at the same time. The Imperial Guard, though, don't really care much about that. They're there to assist the Ultramarines, who are already on Lorne 5, and are trying to get a crew from the Cleach Titanica to recover a unique wreck, the remains of an Imperator-class Titan, known as Dominatus. How exactly an Imperator got there, how exactly Imperator manages to stay alive, no one really knows. What we do know is that the Mechanicus believes there's a chance that this could be recovered, and Imperator Titan is something that is worth many planets. The Ultramarines, however, are currently surrounded. While they do have the Tech Priests with them, the combination of World Eaters and Orcs is making it very hard to get from point A to B. So as always, it falls to the hammer of the Emperor to clear a path. And despite the valor displayed by the Acadians, they're having a bit of a hard go of it, for it turns out that the World Eaters had occupied the Planetary Defense Force Fortress, meaning that they had to clear it corridor by corridor in close quarters combat with the Chaos World Eater Space Marines, an unenviable position if it ever was. However, it's at this point, Eldar of Craftworld Earthway secretly begin assisting the Acadians, for one reason or another. Eventually, the Acadians will reach the Ultramarines and the Titan crew, breaking the siege and uniting the Imperial forces. From there, they begin the long march to reach the Titan, and restore the glory of the Omnissiah. At the same time, the Earthway Eldar, led by their Farseer known as Taldir, are doing everything they can to make sure that no one knows that they're there, because typical Eldar shenanigans. However, there is a particular Orc mech boy who discovers them via the use of his teleporter sensors. How it works? Orc logic. Don't really know, doesn't really matter. What does matter, however, is that he recognizes that them sneaky knife ears are indeed here, which then forces the Eldar to reveal their presence. They have to destroy the Orc and teleport away. However, Orcs hit pretty hard in melee, and the already small Eldar are pretty ravaged by this assault. Thus, Taldir is forced to reveal herself and asks Stern for an alliance. Stern, choosing the less of two evils, agrees, and the Orcs are pushed back, giving the Forces of Order some much-needed breathing room. In the aftermath of the Greenskins, however, Taldir reveals that she doesn't really care about the Titan, surprising absolutely no one. She is instead there to destroy the Necrons. It turns out that Lorne 5 is also a Necron tomb world, and over 60 million years before, these ancient Xenos had inhabited it. And it turns out there's a bunch of angry, sleepy, scaly boys underneath there. So it's her job to make sure they get all blown up before they get awaking. Because if they do fully awake, that's going to be a problem not only for the Eldar, but anyone who isn't a Necron. She further goes on to explain that she could not allow the Necrons to escape, because if they do, they would ravage the surrounding star systems and potentially reach her own craft world. Again, potentially ifs, ands, or maybes, but hey, better safe than sorry. From here, the two factions ally, quote unquote, but they realize that the goals are mutually exclusive, and at this point, the player has to pick whether you choose the Imperial Guard or the Eldar. Regardless of which you choose, the outcomes are pretty much the same. They both then drop their lines and enter a speedy race to reach the Titan first, with the player pick faction reaching first, and the non-pick faction being surrounded by the World Eaters and Orcs and being absolutely destroyed. From there, the faction of Order then has to power up the weapons of the Titan to use it against the surrounding Necrons, who are obviously just awoken. By using the power of the Titan, you're able to fend off the Necrons, World Eaters, and Orcs. And if you choose the Imperium, then you're able to wipe them off the planet and then recover the Titan. If you play the Eldar, you're able to stop the awakening of the Necrons before yeeting off world. And if you play the Eldar, you're able to fully destroy the Necron tomb world as a whole, and the Titan in the progress, but you know, it is what it is. You're then able to bounce off world and carry on with your duty of being an Eldar, and preferably stopping more Necrons from waking up. Now whilst yes, there are some minor differences between each of the campaigns, you basically accomplish the same thing. The difference is whether or not you get the Titan, and whether or not you kill the Necrons completely, I suppose, but that's neither here nor there. We then have the campaign of Disorder, and this begins with a fan favorite, Orc War Boss Guts Ed Eater, as he's trying to reunite the Orc boys on Lorne. The way that the Orcs work is that you have to smash people. The biggest Orc is the best Orc. The best Orc can beat anybody, and you follow the chap who beats you because he's the biggest. Thus, he has to attack the Head Crushers, Rocket Trags, Burner Boys, and Kiwi Mech clans, destroying their quote-unquote big banners. A symbolic gesture which means that if he's strong enough to get there, he's strong enough to lead them. Kinda. It's weird. It's Orcs. Don't think about it too much. And then unite them under his rule. His force, however, is eventually stopped by the shielded gate of the Foot Stompers Fortress. However, this is not a big issue, as he soon destroys the power generators feeding the gate, thus opening it. However, as he enters the base, he realizes that Squigoths are now loose. Squigoths being massive fuck-off squigs. Thus, after freeing the Foot Stompers' mad dog, he is then able to corral the Squigoths and get both them and thus the Foot Stompers under his control. And from there, having united all the Orcs, he then decides it's time for a proper crump. and thus he begins fighting the Blood Legion of Khorne, a chaos warband of the World Eaters led by the Chaos Lord Krull. Gorguts, in his attempt to conquer the world, tries to fly to some unknown destination, but he's shot down by the World Eaters' anti-aircraft battery. Quite a feat for the World Eaters, that. However, Gorguts is one tough lad and he survives, and the Chaos Lord Krull, seeing this, decides that he's going to slay the Greenskin. Because, why not? Blood for the Blood Throne and all that. Krull then soon meets Gorgat's remaining orcs while they're launching assaults on his temples of Khorne. While he's trying to kill Gorgat, Krull realizes that Gorgat is surrounded by a shield, making him invulnerable. What this shield is? Don't really know. It's assumed that it's some type of war energy. Regardless of what it is, Krull then soon sets out to destroy an orc base nearby, and thus the orc power generators feeding the power to Gorgat's shield. Whilst Krull is indeed successful and manages to destroy the orc base, and thus the power generator, Gorgat doesn't really care. He then launches a massive assault on the Celtic forces, because if they want a crump is what they're going to get. But Krull is able to return and put an end to Gorgat, slaying him. Gorgat is now dead, but before Krull can take the massive skull of the big greenskin, he is then abruptly disturbed by the song of the Imperium's people, aka a fuck-off big artillery barrage unleashed by the Cadian 412th. It's at that point where Krull realizes that Gorgat is in fact not dead. As it turns out, he was just playing dead. Sneaky git. Krull, for one reason or another, expects the orcs to help him. Gorgat, however, flatly refuses, and escapes to rouse his boys and kill the Humies himself. So they're technically in an alliance, but it's less of I'm gonna help you, more of we're both doing the same thing and let's not cross paths type of alliance. After Gorgat escapes, he gathers his war and then assaults the Imperial Guard's base. He ends up killing General Stern, and thus takes his head as a trophy. This, however, enrages Krull, because, taking skulls is kind of his whole thing, vowing that he will indeed slay the Greenskin Warlord. That is, however, until he finds out about a bigger skull, aka the skull of the Imperator Titan Dominus. Thus, him being Imperial, he wants to get it, and use it to destroy his enemies, and become a great force amongst the chaos. To do this, he then summons chaos sorcerers from the Eye of Terror. He wants to gather blood from local Imperial forces to appease Khorne, in doing so, being able to perform some type of ritual. It's at this time that the Elder then show up, and, realizing that there's chaos afoot, they attack Krull's base. Eventually, however, Krull manages to fend them off and gather enough blood. That's when the Elder pull their trump card, however, an Avatar of Cain. Krull is then forced to stop doing whatever he's doing, and then use his blood to gather a summoned, brand new Bloodthirster, Great Demon of Khorne. Using this big axe-wielding Chungus, he's able to defeat the Elder. However, Krull uses way too much of the blood in summoning a Bloodthirster, and is forced to gather more later. But while he's doing all this, he then learns that Gorgat is amassing his forces near the Titan. Most likely because that's where the Humies are and that's where the fight is. But to the blood-crazed Lord of Skulls, he fears for the safety of his great prize, believing that the Orc may try and take away the head of his Titan, like he did with General Sturm. Thus, Krull decides to confront Gorgat and kill the Greenskin once and for all. And from here you can pick either Chaos or Orc, and basically the same thing happens. You end up killing the remaining Imperials, and then had the final battle at the base of the Titan. From there, the Necrons then appear, and then you end up killing the Imperials, the Necrons, and then either the Chaos Boys or the Greenskins, one or the other. However, very interestingly enough, with Krull, one very important thing happens. He orders his sorcerers to possess the Titan using a demon spirit, essentially turning it into a weird type of Abominatus type thing. He's then able to rebuild the Imperator Titan, and if this is true, he would become a massive warlord of chaos, because a demon-possessed Imperator Titan is a hell of a thing. As for Gorgat, he's happy, as in addition to General Sturm, he has a Necron Overlord, Ultra Ring Captain, and of course, the Chaos Lord Krull's head to his latest trophy, with Gorgat personally slaying Krull in a one-on-one duel. In the aftermath of this victory, Gorgat is happy with his war, thus he decides to go off and find another war to fight, because there's always more fighting to be done. As to what exactly is the canonical ending, we don't really know too much. What we do know for certain is that Taldia does indeed survive and she manages to get off world, or is taken prisoner by the Imperials. Gorgat, however, manages to kill Krull, and he's still out and about doing Zorky nonsense. The main point of contention is whether or not the Guard get the Titan, as we have book sources that claim that they indeed were able to get it, but it's never mentioned again in the in-game sources, so it's a little iffy. However, I don't think that the Imperial Guard got the Titan, because that would be a big thing, and we do have some sources from the role-playing books which say that the Cadians actually lost that battle. Consider that it's never mentioned again and everything in between and all the sources we have, I don't think the Imperials got that Titan. Also, it'd be kind of a big deal if they did get it, so yeah, that's me. Next up, we then have Dark Crusade. Dark Crusade is the second expansion of Dawn of War 1, and now we find ourselves on the former Imperial civilized world of Kronos, a planet on the eastern fringe of the Imperium in the Ultima Segmentum. And we say former Imperial civilized world because currently, it has now been led by the Tau Empire. It turns out that this world also is an ancient Necron tomb world. Even worse, however, the the Skelly Boys are starting to wake up. Thus, Elder from Craftworld Earthway soon arrived to stop the Necrons, because Skelly Boys waking up is bad for the knife ears. And this plan is one hell of an overachievement, as it turns out there is a variety of hidden Imperial relics, many of them left behind from the Great Horror's heresy, some of them dating back to the Legions. Thus, all Imperial elements a la the Blood Raven, Space Marines, Imperial Guard, and of course Wordbearers want it. Because Imperial stuff, there's also orcs, not just one orc variety, but two separate orc varieties, including a local feral orc population in the form of savage orcs, and of course everyone's favorite war boss is back, as Gorgot's Eddieator found another will to crump. And of course you then have the actual dude whose will it technically current is, that being Tau Governor Arlen Shores. And regardless of all the bullshit going on, he and his fire warriors are determined to keep this world within the Tau Empire. Thus, a massive whoever knows how many way war is going on. As in with the previous expansion, there are very many different endings depending on which campaign and which faction you play as, with each faction having their own unique campaign. However, they can all be summed up as follows. The Blood Ravens, using their skill as well as the infighting nature of the orcs, are able to break up the war, causing infighting between the orcs. Gorgots, however, is able to escape, detonating several warheads and killing not only his own minions, but more importantly, several Blood Ravens and Imperials. Thus, he's able to dip from the planet to continue his search for a good crump. The Necrons are woken up, and they want to kill everyone on their planet and then kill everyone not on their planet. The Blood Ravens, however, won't let that happen. Thus, they delve deep into the depths of the world, led by Captain David Thule, who places a powerful explosive device, causing the catacombs to collapse, destroying all the alive Necrons and preventing any more from waking up, forever sealing their threat. Or so it seems, as it's stated that not all the Necrons are dead, so, a little bit of ambiguity there. As for the Elder, Farseer Taldir is back. Her and the Elder begin massing on the northwestern reaches of the planet Kronos. But the Elder being the Elder don't want to exactly get themselves killed. So what they do is that they begin manipulating a Chaos Cult and a splinter fleet of orcs to attack the Blood Ravens. The Blood Ravens however see right through this, and through the sheer might of big armored men, they're able to break through the orcs and the Chaos Cults, destroying both of them. From there, they're able to take control of the 3 Eldar Webway gates, preventing the rest of the Eldar army from retreating. Here, Taldir decides to sacrifice her own life to allow her troops to flee. Ultimately though, it's left unknown whether they actually manage to escape into the planet or they were destroyed by the Blood Ravens. We then have the Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard are currently led by Government Militant Lucas Alexander, as they are stationed in a base near a Hellstorm cannon, their base being part of a former Imperator Class Titan. I know this is Dawn of War, but still, multiple Titans, multiple Necron worlds, it's a lot. However, Lucas is in charge of defending Victory Bay, after the Imperials have claimed it from the Tau. However, Lucas Alexander is a little cooked, and he decides that he is going to do whatever he has to remain in control of his planet, even if it means fighting other Imperial forces, other the Space Marines. The Blood Ravens, however, are able to breach Victory Bay. At this point, they're able to take control of the Hellstorm cannon itself, and manage to convince some of the Imperial Guard to join them, because fighting Space Marines, loyalist Space Marines mind you, is just dumb. Thus, these new Imperial forces were able to breach through Lucas Alexander's defenses, and put an end to the Governor Militant on Kronos. Though, a weirdly fucked thing is that it's mentioned by the Blood Ravens that they had Alexander in the highest regard. The fact that he had stayed absolutely loyal to his orders and defended Victory Bay with every single ounce of gut that he had. And they were even commended on honor for their bravery in standing up to the Blood Ravens. Except for the company that joined them, that being the 5th Company. They were all executed without mercy for betraying their regiment, even though they had joined forces with the Space Marines, even after their commissar had died to prevent them from doing so. That's just a dick move by the Blood Ravens, I'm not gonna lie. We then have the Tau. The Tau begin their assault on the Imperial city of Asherus, which they then reconstruct into their brand new capital, known as Ores Tashun, a very strong fortress. Using a mixture of Kroot, Tau, Xenos, and other humans, they're able to build a powerful defense, and using the city's advanced communication, they're able to keep a tab on the Blood Ravens. However, the Blood Ravens don't really care, because Space Marine Hammer go bonk. They're able to fight their way through Kroot and Tau alike, and eventually a strike force is able to kill the Tau Ethereal, known as Anil. And if you know Tau lore, you know that the Tau are pretty much fucked by now. Shasho Kas, the current Tau commander in charge, decides to flee with the Ethereal's body, believing the planet to be lost. Whether or not he actually makes it out, or he's outright killed in the route, no one really knows. And finally, we have the Chaos Boys. The Wordbearers are led by their Dark Apostle, known as Elephas the Inheritor. They're able to rip open a hole straight in the warp, and construct a big gate around it to keep it stable. This then allows Chaos demons to pour through the rift, and corrupt the very land itself, because Chaos do that. The Blood Ravens see this is another sign that this has to go. Elephas constructs a massive defense, but he makes one very bad decision. He allows the individual Chaos Lords to command their own retinues of defense, rather than being an overall seer of it. This then allows the Blood Ravens to punch through a gate, and they're able to cut their bloody way through a gauntlet of Chaos Space Marines and break the Chaos Gate. Elephas, being sad, and having failed his demonic masters one too many times, is sacrificed, with his soul being sent screaming back into the warp. As to what exactly is the canon ending, well, that would be the Blood Angels ending. Blood Angels ending being the Imperial Guard ending, in which case they managed to claim the planet, betrayal of the Guard, and all that nonsense, yada yada. Next, we have Soulstorm, which is the third and final expansion of Dawn of War 1, and interestingly enough, it's a standalone expansion pack, with a whole 9 factions to play the campaign. The plot is as follows. On the world of Kurava 4, a massive warp storm begins. Thus, all 9 factions are drawn to investigate the system for one reason or another, but let's be honest, we need a reason for them to come together and fight. However, the warp being the warp means that all 9 of them are then stuck on the 7 different planets, 4 planets and 3 moons. Thus, we get a massive battle royale, because of course. The reason for the warp storm is then explained by Chaos forces during the campaign, as it began with an ignorant Imperial Guardsman who turned out was a Laken Psyker. He was slowly being whispered to by the Guards of Chaos, and him being the dumb guy that he is listened to them. Well, to be fair to him, do you know what a demon sounds like? Because Lord knows I sure don't. He then ends up sacrificing himself in the ritual, and then accidentally summons a warband of the Alpha Legion Chaos Space Marines, and lo and behold, the conflict did began. 3 armies were already on the planet when the warp storm began, that being the 252nd Consultor Regiment of the Imperial Guard, who were under the command of Governor General Vance Stubbs. The feral Savage Orcs of Confer 2, who have been uplifted and become even better and the best crumpers they could be, via the tutelage of a brand new warlord, everyone's favorite, Gorgot's Ediza. And then of course the Necrons, because yes, this is a Necron tomb world. But thanks to the sacrifice of the Imperial Guardsmen, the Alpha Legion then show up. They're under the command of Chaos Champion, a Chaos Corn Champion mind you, known as Ferveus Charon. He then establishes base forces on the world of Kurava 4. How they got here? No one knows. Alpha Legion, simple as, but the fact of the matter is, they is here. Sensing all this happen, the Blood Ravens then decide to show up, fielding a force of 5 whole companies, half the chapter, led by an unnamed force commander and Captain Indrik Boreal. The force commander you get to name yourself, though he is given a canonical name later on. And their goal is to destroy all the Xenos and heretics, and restore the planet to the Imperium of Man. On the world of Kurava 2, known to the Tau Empire as the now Nyanoi, they decide to establish their own empire, and spread the glory of the greater good to all those willing to listen. Spoilers, no one is in fact willing to listen. But if they won't listen to the words of the Imperial, perhaps they'll listen to the big gun. aka a giant fuck-off plasma cannon known as the Arc Cannon, under the command of Commander Shas-Os Oris Ka. Necrons also there too, because of course they are. However, on the world of Kurava 3, where the Necrons then awake, this then triggers a long unused webway gate. And lo and behold, the Eldar of Crawford Oathway pour through, led by Farseer Kreus, to fight and destroy their long-hated enemies. At the same time, another webway gate opens. But this time, it doesn't lead to a Crawford, but rather Kamara. As it turns out, a raiding party from the Cabal of the Black Heart, led by Archon Tarhill, then appear. Because, yeah, they wanna do some stuff. Stuff is bad and involves a lot of bad things, like murder and slavery. And then finally, to top it all off, the Sisters of Battle then show up. More specifically, the Order of the Sacred Rose, led by Canoness Sela Agan. They arrive on the world of Kurava 1, and they have come here to cleanse the star system of every lost Xeno and heretic. Even if said heretics might in fact be the other servants of the Emperor, but you know, that's neither here nor there. It's the Imperial Church. Burn, burn, motherfucker. As you can imagine, each campaign faction has its own ending, but the canonical ending is then revealed in Dawn of War 2. Scout Sergeant Cyrus then reveals that the Blood Ravens under Captain Boreal died. Like, they died a lot. It's assumed that all 5 companies were lost, meaning that a full half of the chapter was just wiped out in one campaign, which is pretty bad. This then leads to the recruiting crisis that takes place as the main storyline in Dawn of War 2. But it was then revealed in Dawn of War 3 that everyone's favorite orc did in fact win, as Gorguts manages to kill everybody, probably the Blood Ravens included, and he was able to establish a Kavara system as the heart of his war. How did he do this? We are never told, but it involved a lot of cursing, a lot of punching, and a lot of good crumping. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of Dawn of War 1. Dawn of War 2 takes place in the subsector Aurelia of the Koranis sector, and we come back to everyone's favorite wacky Space Marine chapter, the Blood Ravens. As it here is revealed that the Blood Ravens are a fleet-based chapter, and it turns out that this subsector is a massive source of not only their recruits but all their other resources, specifically drawn from the hive world of Mirrodin. However, our first mission takes us to the world of Calderis, when a Blood Ravens force commander and Sergeant Tuckus then have to launch a deep strike into the feudal world, as they have to aid Captain David Thule and his remaining company of Blood Angels, as they are currently engaging in a force of orcs who are threatening the people of Calderis, and thus the whole world itself. It's here that the outcome of Dawn of War 1 then gets revealed, with the fact that the chapter losing over half its boys, and they need a bunch more neophytes to make up the losses. As the Blood Ravens begin driving the orcs off Calderis, they are confronted by a mech boy known as Bad Zappa and his war truck. However, the Astartes is able to collapse the mine, which the orcs use as their assault tunnels to assault the human settlements. thus claiming a needed victory. We then move to a hamlet on the world, where Scout Sergeant Cyrus is waiting for reinforcements against an incoming Orc assault. The strike force then manages to fight their way to the Blood Ravens, led by Sergeant Arvitas. They manage to rescue him and save the hamlet from the Orcs. The Blood Ravens then receive word that the Orcs have attacked 2 more locations on Calderis. At this point, the Space Marines realize this isn't just plain Orc crumpin'. There's something a bit more tactical going on to this. Thus, they're able to extract information from the Orc leaders known as Sky Killer and Gut Wretcher, and they discover that both of them had managed to visit the Fellhammer mine. In addition to that, the mech known as Bad Zapper was also there. From there, Sergeant Cyrus then remains aboard the Armageddon, and he provides technical support to the rest of the campaign. Yet as the Astartes enter the mine, they then discover the Eldar. More specifically, an Eldar Warp Spider Exarch and his retinue of boys. Before a Chainsword and Warp Blade could clash, the Eldar just dip, and lo and behold, the Orcs show up. The Astartes are then saved by the ambushing Orcs from Sergeant Thaddeus. At the same time, they also discover that Bad Zappa was under attack by an Eldar Warlock and a company of Guardians. The Astartes then jump into the fray, and they manage to slay the Warlock, though the Orc mech escapes yet again. Yet as the Warlock died, he leaves a cryptic message, saying that there is a foe far greater than any of them, and his existence threatens the very subsector. The Blood Ravens don't really give a shit because it's the babblings of an Eldar, and that stuff is usually luck. The Blood Ravens then travel to the feral jungle world of Typhoon Primaris. It turns out there are more Eldar there, and you gotta kill them. It's revealed here that the Warp Spider Exarch is stirring up the feral orcs of the Evil Sons clan, rotated not only in Typhon, but basically all over. Again, the Exarch also mentioned his quote-unquote greater foe. Yet as the Eldar are confronted by the Blood Ravens, David Thule asks to return to Calderis. As it turns out, the Bad Zapper was back, and he was launching attack against the capital desert planet. It's also at this time that the citizens began reporting small purple creatures killing livestock. The Space Marines then returned to Calderis, and finally killed the Orc mech, but here they were soon assaulted by Tyranids, and lo and behold, Highfleet Leviathan had shown up. From here the Tyranids and the Space Marines fight, eventually with them overcoming them, at least for now. From there they then return to the world of Typhon, and they leave the apothecary known as Gordian in charge of caring for the badly wounded David Thule, who had managed to 1v1 a very big Tyranid warrior. The Blood Ravens then killed the Eldar Ranger known as Nerian, who again had been stirring up the feral orcs. It's around this point we then return to Calderis yet again, and finally kill the Tyranid warrior who had wounded Thule. From here the Blood Ravens then have 3 things they gotta do. They gotta get samples of the biomass from the Nids to create a poison to kill them. They then also need to secure data from an astronomical relay, which apparently is from the Dark Age technology? Jesus God. Apparently this could show the critical weakness in the approaching Hive fleet. And finally, they need to defend the great hive city of Angel Forge on the prime hive world of Maduran, preventing their boys from getting eaten. From here, doing all of this, they were able to get exactly what they needed, being able to unleash orbital bombardments and deep strikes. It was also allowing Sergeant Tarkus to get Terminator honors, in addition to a Tyranid biotoxin being added to their Dreadnought suits. Said Dreadnought suit now being Captain Davian Thule, who had been interred within a cybernetic coffin of a Dreadnought. Though, the Eldar were not idle during this, as Farseer and Darien began launching massive attacks. As it turns out, the whole plan of Craftworld Earthworld was to lure this splinter feet to Maduran, using the world's human population as bait. From there, once the Tyranids were gorging themselves on human flesh, the Eldar using their warp magic would destroy them and the humans altogether. The Blood Angels would not let this happen, because this is kind of their home. However, once they were ready, navigators of the Blood Ravens battle barge known as the Litany of Fury, which had been making its way to the aid of the Rain subsector, finally got assaulted by the Shadow in the Warp. And lo and behold, the Blood Ravens were on their own. From there, they would administer the biotoxin through the hive mind. And whilst they were able to administer the poison to the hive mind, it would come at a cost, as the strike cruiser Armageddon and Apothecary Gordon were both killed. Yet while the bioships were slowly being poisoned, it appeared that the Blood Angels would not live to see their victory, as they possessed no means of retreat, and a bunch of angry Nids were preparing to attack them. Suddenly, like a brat straight out of hell, Captain Gabriel Angelos and an entire company of Blood Ravens slammed into the battlefield. As it turns out that the Litany of Fury had indeed managed to arrive, and lo and behold, the beleaguered Blood Ravens were relieved. From here, Angelos himself would join the Force Commander, because they had one thing left they had to do. They had to kill the Hive Tyrant Alpha who's controlling the Swarm. With the Hive Tyrant dead, the Swarms turned on each other. In combination with the poison, the Tyranids slowly died out. And we end with a nice scene of the Blood Ravens standing victorious, their people having been saved, and the Nids being absolutely destroyed. Next up we have Chaos Rising, the first expansion for Dawn of War 2. Here, the Blood Ravens Force Commander and his Astartes then arrive on the planet Aurelia, along with a newly requisitioned Blood Raven strike cruiser known as Retribution. It turns out they received the Blood Raven's distress code, thus as they go to find out what the hell is up with the boys, it turns out that the boys are already dead. But they are then ambushed by traitor God and heretical Night House, known as Vantis. After escaping the trap and leaving the area, the Force Commander with the good old Dreadnought Davian then moved to rescue their librarian, known as Johnny Aura. He is currently under attack by Cromwell Eldari, because it turns out they actually uncovered some ancient Eldar runes and several Wraithguard. After receiving a distress call from Governor DeRosa of Meridian, the Blood Ravens then proceed to the Angel's Gate. where bands of orcs, having been driven there by the traitor House Vandus, begin looting the area. They then later encounter Chaos Space Marine forces of the Black Legion, who are attempting to take over Angel Forge. And lo and behold, Elephas the Inheritor is back, that former Dark Apostle from way back when in Dawn of War 1. However, despite this, the Chaos forces soon repelled, and after this, a combined Imperial Guard Bloodraven strike force then returned back to Aurelia to remove the remaining entrenched Black Legion. However, Traitor House Vandus Imperial Guard forces as well as Chaos cultists are proving incredibly hard. It is at this point that the Blood Ravens then discover a Chaos Temple, and after a gruesome battle against summoned demons, because that's a thing, yet they're able to completely destroy it. Despite this, however, the Chaos Champion leading the Black Legion, known as Argus the Pillager, is talking shit, because of course he is. However, with the fall of the temple, the war begins to tear the planet asunder, which then forces the Blood Ravens to immediately dip. Argus, however, lets the Force Commander and his boys escape off-world, as here it's revealed that there is in fact a chaotic traitor within the ranks of the Blood Ravens. And here's when we reach a split in the campaign. You see, there is a mechanic known as corruption. Basically, depending on what you do and what choices you make, you'll be anywhere from fully pure to fully corrupt. And this depends on who the traitor is, what exactly happens, and a bunch of various different things. But regardless of what exactly happens, basically it boils down to this. The Black Legion's ultimate goal is to release a great demon of Nurgle, a great unclean one, and thus to corrupt the entirety of the sector, taking the Blood Ravens with them. Blood Ravens, however, they won't let that happen, and after a long battle, the greater demon is finally destroyed and sealed away from Aurelia. With him gone, the Black Legion forces are finally sent packing, and aboard the battle barge Litany of Fury, Gabriel Angelos declares the Blood Ravens victorious over the Black Legion. However, it turns out that there is a bunch of chaos corruption they have to deal with, so they have to clean house. As it turns out, their chapter master, known as Arsum Karis, has been corrupted by chaos. Again, depending on what decisions you made, it depends on who you kill. But we do have a canonical ending. For as the resurrected Elephas tells Abaddon the Spoiler that he will yet destroy the Blood Ravens, being all cringy and chaotic that he is. As according to Sergeant Tarkus, it was Sergeant Artemis that was the traitor, as they both had served in Kronos. Next up we have the second and final expansion for Dawn of War 2, that being Retribution. Depending on which faction you pick, you then arrive on Typhoon Primaris, and your job is to kill whoever's there. You pick Space Marine, you're fighting Chaos. You pick Eldar, you're fighting Orcs. You pick Imperial Guard, you're fighting Tyranids. And vice versa. From there it's learned that the Inquisition has decided that the subsector is gone, it's cooked. So, exterminate is time. While that sucks, later on you are given an objective to eliminate Arizen Karis, the former chapter master of the Blood Angels, now turned heretic leader, who then intends to use said exterminatus as a genocidal sacrifice to Khorne. With all the blood spilt, Khorne will welcome him as a demon prince. Again, depending on who you pick, your reasons change. Space Marines, Guard, and Eldar hate Chaos, so Chaos bad. Orcs like a fight, and the Niz are simply just hungry. Regardless of how, what, when, or why, Kairos must die. That rhymed. You then have to get the hell out of Dodge, and manage to find transport off Typhoon, escaping a local chaos court along the way. You then soon arrive on the Will of Calderas. From there, it's a fight against the corrupted Blood Raven Space Marines. Same boys from Dawn of War 2. After destroying the war portal on Aurelian, it is then revealed that there is an attack going on in Meridian right now, ordered by Karas. And as you arrive on Meridian, you then kill a bunch of traitor guard, and realize that this was all a hoax. For it turns out from intercepting a transmission, Karas is still on Typhon, and you find his location. From there you make a 180 and go back to Typhoon Primaris to finally kill that bastard Karas himself, only of course to be ambushed by Eldar, from Biel Town this time. You don't know exactly what they're doing, but it's some type of weird ritual, thus you kill the Eldar there, even if you are Eldar, which is interesting. Following this, Karas reveals that the Eldar ritual was in fact preventing the Imperial Inquisition from arriving to the subsector via warp shenanigans. Whoopsie daisy. The Inquisition fleet then arrives and exterminatus soon begins, with you getting the hell out of Dodge right before a cyclonic torpedo reduces Typhoon's surface to fucking nothing. You then find yourself on a space hulk known as the Judgment of Carrion. From there you recover, tend to your wounds, and you found a newfound resolve to stop Karas. Again, depending on who, what, when, where, why, it really does change. You're able to discover that the Chaos Corrupted Blood Ravens, as well as Tyrus himself, a death world that already underwent exterminatus decades before. For what reason? The Lord Almighty knows. But, since it's already dead, the Inquisition doesn't care. Perfect place to hide. But from there, the faction you choose launches a massive attack, and you gotta kill Chaos Space Marines, corrupted Imperial Guard, and traitor Blood Ravens all together. And this is done by using their most powerful unit, aka their big old chunky Lord of War. And this depends on what faction you choose. Imperial Guard get a Blame Blade, Eldar get a Wraith Titan. Yet with all the blood being spilled, Kairos finally begins to ascend to demonhood. But then, Big Chungus Captain Gabriel Angelos and his third company manage to square up with the boy. Yeah, while Gabriel and his boys try to kill Kairos, they're unable to, as his demonic powers makes him just that big too tough to kill. However, with help from the player faction, Gabriel Angelos and the player together are able to defeat Kairos and destroy him completely removing any and all influence of chaos from the subsector. Now again, depending on which faction you chose, the ending is different. But this time we have a solid canonical ending, that being the Blood Ravens. After you manage to kill Kairos, Captain Diomedes will then ring the Inquisitor known as Adrasa and ask her to stop the Assassinatus. From here, the Blood Ravens chapter is then purged of any and all remaining Chaos Taint. And Mr. Gabriel Angelos, after being revived from the literal bounds of death, homie is hard to kill, but not by himself as he has a buttload of cybernetics now. He's then appointed as the brand new chapter master of the Blood Ravens. And the Blood Ravens find themselves, although diminished in strength, their spirit purity is absolutely emphatic, and they stand ready to continue their journey as the hallowed sons of the Imperium. And then finally, we have Dawn of War 3, which has no expansion, surprising absolutely no one. Look, I'm gonna be honest, I'm just gonna breeze through this one a little bit because this video is very long as hell and I've covered everything else in pretty good detail, but this is just not really worth it. But basically, we have three main factions here. The Imperium, led by the Blood Ravens and Chapter Master Gabriel Angelos. Backflip for the win! The Elder, led by Farseer Marker, or Marcher, however you pronounce it. And of course, everyone's favorite orky boy, Gorguts. Basically, everyone is there for their own different and unique reason. The Imperial Knight world of Cyrus Ultima is currently being assaulted by a bunch of orcs. Not Gorguts, very importantly. Another war boss by the name of Gitstomper. An Inquisitor by the name of Holt then orders the Imperial Navy to blockade the planet, but more specifically, denies the loyal Knight House world of House Farlock any aid whatsoever. The Blood Ravens then run the blockade and then decide to go and help. However, Varlock Keep, their main place, is currently being looted by one of Gitstomper's erstwhile lieutenant, Gorguts. There he is. But don't worry, he'll be the big boss by the end of this. The orcs then decide they're going to make a massive fuck of cannon and use it to fight off the Eldar, who also are in Cyprus Ultima assaulting the orcs. Inquisitor Holt just proves to be that he is an absolute piece of shit and reminds Angelos that their mission is to utilize a dozen Romulus-class starforts in order to form a blockade to prevent any and all warp contention coming from Acheron. Because it turns out, there's a lot of them. They're not to be distracted by the orcs, the Eldar, or anything in between, just do what you need to do and let everyone die. Yeah, he's not a good character. The Eldar on the world are Cropwell Bieltan. They are led by Archer Kyrie, known as the Swordwind. From there, he then summons Farseer Marker to aid him against the Greenskins. Kyrie intends to use Cyprus Ultima as a staging ground, as he plans to travel to the planet Acheron, which is said to emerge after the warp after being stuck in it for many centuries. And it turns out he's got a little bit of that Cain madness, where it turns out the Spear of Cain, yes, the actual Spear of Cain, is said to be somewhere on the planet. Kai had also previously seized the Spirit Stone of the Farseer Taldiel, and when I say seized, I mean he stole it from a twin brother, the Eldar Ranger known as Rohan, while he was on their way to their own homeworld, by the way. And here Taldiel's spirit then tells Kyrie the prophecy, specifically the one about the Spear of Cain. It is prophesied that the Wayfarers will be called forth by the Spear of Cain and united by the Storm Prince, and destroy the evil. Convinced that he's a Storm Prince, because of fucking course he would be convinced, the power-hungry, ambitious, and kind of stupid Orc decides that he is going to keep Taldiel prisoner, and he is going to become the Storm Prince and unite the Eldar and be the best dude. Farseer Marker, for her part, does not trust Kyrie at all, and secretly plans to overthrow him, getting some help from Rohan, Taldiel's brother, who's pretty much pissed. Also, Jane Zar shows up. Yes, that Jane Zar. And she pretty much supports Marker's plan. As for the orcs, Gitstomper's Mega Cannon is sabotaged by Gorguts, and this happened right as when Gitstomper was going to throw hands with the Eldar. Gitstomper ends up becoming defeated, and with this, Gorguts quickly becomes the boss. Gorguts then forms a new warband and begins preparation to travel to the lost world of Acheron. He had learned this from the Eldar, and Gorguts wants the super pointy stick for all himself. During all this time, Farseer Marker and the Blood Ravens are currently throwing hands. Basically, from there, it's a bunch of fighting with each factions, all making their way to Acheron, and it turns out Acheron is also home to a great demon of Khorne. Where have I seen this before? Talda then explains that everything was very unclear and she doesn't really know exactly what this is. Turns out being a split inside of a stone doesn't mean you have 20/20 vision. From there, the Elder then split off into two separate factions, one under Farseer Marcher trying to stop all this nonsense, and one under Kyrie who allies with Gorguts to get the spear. Kai ends up getting the spear, and then tries to kill Gorguts. It turns out though that this was a trap, as this is in fact not the Spear of Cain, but in fact it is a relic of said greater demon. And when Christ stabs Gorguts, the main blade shatters, and lo and behold, it is Kara who actually dies, as he's consumed by a blood sacrifice that then releases the bloodthirster from the ice. Again. And basically this is not just any bloodthirster, but a super mega bloodthirster. As it turns out, every single life that had ever been taken in the pursuit of this said spear now empowers him. For some reason. Look, at the end of this, all three of them then join together. The prophecy is revealed that it's all three of them are the big boys and they need to unite together and kill everyone, and they end up killing the greater demon, and then they all decide to part ways, with the Gorguts claiming whatever's left of the spear as a trophy, and then there's a Necron Overlord watching. The story is not good, the story is iffy, but there you go. Man, Dawn of War 3 had so much potential. But, whereas Dawn of War 3 failed, Dawn of War 4 will succeed. And now you're finally caught up with all the story about it. But what exactly looks forward in Dawn of War 4? No one knows. But one thing for sure, it's going to be great. And the story is going to be significantly better than 3. Then again, that's not like a hard bargain by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that wonderful YouTube stuff. I want to say a massive thank you guys for watching. And even more massive thank you to my awesome members and Patreons. Massive shout out to my Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Curtis Studies, Mr. Eddie V3, and Miss Majora of the Void. Massive shout out to the good old NCOs of the Sergeants, with Mr. Damiak, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Mooresmith.Fireheart, Mr. Sean IRL7, Mr. Bolwin, and Mr. Matthew Merrill. Big shout out to my corporal tier members, with Mr. Tremeo the Math Kitty, Mr. Lord Rosarius, Miss Shauna Smithers, Mr. Tech Priest Toaster, Mr. Gentle Salamander, Mr. Rambling Hamster, and the Wench of Warhammer. And finally, but certainly not least, the awesome privateer, with Mr. Thomas Oslons, Mr. Ivan_SBW, Mr. Michael Aeda, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. CMD Neo, Mr. Fortress Unum, Mr. Dalmaric, Eric Massaro, and Mr. Weaselhack. Thank y'all. I love y'all. I appreciate you. Some table memberships get a bunch of awesome benefits to get to help out your boy, and you allow these videos to happen. So sincerely, thank y'all, and I love y'all. But ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching. Y'all make sure to stay low out there, boys and gals. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. I don't care what you say about Dawn of War 3, Gabriel Angelos flipping around the Terminator armor was fucking funny, and that is a prime memory of mine. I love it so much, bro.